Bob here, and in this video I'm going to go over the requirements for Component 3 Media Project 2021 to 22. Now, I'm going to be giving you two different print options that you can pick from. The first one is going to be the magazine brief. Now, as you can see, this is officially brief 2 of the different briefs we were offered. Now, what are the details of this brief? You'll be producing a cross-media production. That means you'll be doing a bit of print, but also a secondary project, which is either going to be a podcast or a YouTube video. So a bit of video, a bit of audio. So you're doing a cross-media production for a new magazine in a specific genre or subgenre of your choice. Genre obviously being French for type. Subgenre is a subtype. So a genre of magazine, for example, is lifestyle magazine, and a subgenre of that might be men's fashion. So you will be creating original print pages for a new magazine. So you have to invent this magazine. It can't be one that already exists. And I suggest that one of the two issues you have to do should be issue 1. With that, you have associated audio-visual material. We won't bother with the web design, we haven't really got the equipment to do it. You should create a cross-media production for an independent publishing organisation, such as Anthem Publishing, TCO London or Pride Media, targeting a specialised audience of 16 to 25-year-olds with a particular interest in your chosen genre. So, the product you've got to do for your main one, task 1, is a print product. You have to do 2 front covers, obviously one each from a different edition, and a double-page spread feature article for your new magazine. As it says, the front cover should be from different editions of the magazine. They could be winter and summer editions, or literally it could be issue 1 and issue 2, or June and July, whatever. So you'll be producing 2 front covers and 1 double page spread for a total of 4 pages. What do you have to have on these pages? Now, you have to make sure that you have fulfilled requirements of every one of these bullet points as an absolute bare minimum. Okay? If any of these is missing, you can't pass. So, you have to have an original title and masthead. And with that, it's got to have a strap line. So one of the first things you're going to have to do is come up with some ideas for your magazine name. This is not as easy as you might think. For a start, you've got to make sure that there aren't any other magazines that are already called that. So a bit of a Google search to go and find out if anyone else has already taken that idea. But you've got to consider A, what is the magazine going to be called? And B, why are you calling it that? What are the connotations? What's the strap line? It could be, I don't know, UK's newest fashion magazine. I don't know, whatever, something like that, but more imaginative and creative. Okay? How does that communicate the ethos and the ideology of the magazine, for example? You've got to consider how much this magazine is going to cost per issue. So you want to research other magazines to find out how much they cost. So you need to have a cover price on your magazine. A first issue might have a special introductory offer, like issue 1 only £1, recommended retail price £4.99, something like that. Obviously got a barcode. I'm not going to expect you to make a barcode. You have to find one on the internet. You just Google that, but it has to be the right kind of barcode. But obviously your magazine has to have images on it. Now, you have to have a minimum of 8 original images across your magazine. Every image in your magazine has to have been taken by you. You can't take any images off the internet except for the barcode. Everything else has to be photographed by you. Unless, for example, you want, let's say, social media logos like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or you want the logo of the production company, the publishing company, yeah, you can take those off the internet. I'm not expecting you to make those. But as a rule, Every other image has to have been taken by you. So, the original image, cover image, has to be appropriate to the genre and the specific edition of the magazine. You have to have at least one image on the front cover. You may want more. Depends on the style of the magazine you're going from. At least one of your front cover images should be a person. Personally, I'd recommend them both being person, and they should be different people on each front cover. They can't be the same person. Obviously, it has to have at least one lead cover line relating to that main image, and at least 3 additional cover lines. You can, of course, have more than that if you want. Plus any other design elements you want on your front cover as well. The double page spread can be an entire complete article, or it could be an extract from a longer article. An article on a topic or issue appropriate to the genre of the magazine and the target audience. You have to write the article. It has to be approximately 400 words in length and related to a cover line on one of the front covers. Could be the main cover line, could be one of the other cover lines. It says approximately 400 words in length. I would make it exactly 400 words in length. It isn't clear whether that word count includes other things like the title and any pull quotes or subheadings or whatever, or the stand first or the headline or anything like that. So I would make the actual body text 400 words, because if you were commissioned to write an article for a magazine, you would have a specific word count to hit. Obviously, it's got to have a headline, a stand first or deck, whatever you want to call it. It has to have a byline. With that, it should have photo credits. It doesn't say that, but we should put them in there anyway. It has to have subheadings, or crossheads as they're technically called. It has to have a column layout that's appropriate to the genre of the magazine. However many columns you have should be based on whichever ones you've researched. It has to have at least one main image, and it has to have some smaller additional or minor images. They all have to be different. They have to be different from the ones that are on the front cover, so you can't reuse that one. They should also be varied. They can't all be taken in the same place at the same time and look the same. So they should include images of people. So they can't be, all of them. Well, it says they should include. So I'm assuming at least one of them has to be a person, but frankly, they should all be people, frankly. And they should be captioned and credited. You have to have at least 2 pull quotes. I suggest one on the image and one in the body text. You also have to have the folio elements. So it should have the magazine title and page numbers on every page. You might also want to include other elements like, say, the web address. And I would also suggest that the pages should have appropriate running department heads on them as well. The secondary task 2 to go with that, is an audiovisual product. As you can see, the details of the brief are the same, and this video product should link to your magazine. So you can either do a podcast or a YouTube channel video. Then it has to be linked to the magazine that you have done. So your video or podcast extract should be between 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 30 seconds long. No more, no less. So, details. Production must include as a minimum. Now you'll notice that the requirements here for the podcast and the YouTube channel are essentially exactly the same, except that you have to do video for the YouTube video as well. So, technically speaking, the YouTube video would be more work. Not much more work, but a bit more work. So, the audio sequence from the magazine's podcast, a feature relating to one of the cover lines on one of the print covers, either a reality feature but someone who appears in the magazine, or a documentary sequence about a relevant topic or issue. This should be different from the feature article in the print production. So in other words, it can't be about the same topic as the double page spread. Your double page spread should, however, relate to one of the front covers you've done. So the audio sequence has to have an introduction to the item, an interview with someone related to the feature. It has to be recorded in 2 different locations, so a studio setting and a location relevant to the feature, such as the interviewee's place of work. A range of audio materials, which should include dialogues, voiceovers, sound beds, jingles, editing of sound. If you do music or music tech, you can write your own jingle. If you don't, you can take a jingle and sound effects off the internet, but you have to reference where you got them from. Although I would recommend trying to do your own sound effects because it's fun. Obviously all this has to be edited in a way that is appropriate. Audio-visual sequence from a magazine's YouTube channel is the other option. A feature relating to one of the cover lines on one of the print covers, either a reality feature about someone who appears in the magazine, or a documentary sequence about the relevant topic or issue. It should be different from the feature article in the print production. So essentially exactly the same as the podcast. Just like the podcast, it has to have an introduction to the item, an interview with someone related to the feature, filming in 2 different locations, a studio setting and a location relevant to the feature, such as the interviewee's place of work, editing of sound and of visual images, and a range of camera shots and angles appropriate to the feature. As you can see, they're exactly the same, except that the YouTube video is a bit more difficult because you have to actually film it. Especially under, at this point, we don't know what the COVID requirements are going to be when you're doing your project. We don't know if after summer restrictions are going to be lifted, or whether we'll go back into lockdown potentially, or whether we still have to social distance, for how long, etc. So my advice would be to do the podcast. If you want to do the YouTube channel, I'm not stopping you. I'm just saying it might be difficult. So, if you're doing magazines, one of the companies we have to look at is TCO, the other one is Anthem, and the other one is Pride Media. TCO Publishing make magazines such as Classic Pop, was that Luvo Fairies, Colouring Heaven, that's what apparently, Italia, Planet Mindful, Vegan Food, Vintage Rock and Women's Running. None of which, you'll notice, actually are aimed at the 18 to 25-year-old target audience that your magazine's supposed to be. TCO have 2 magazines, Huck, which is kind of like an independent alternative lifestyle magazine, and Little White Lies, both of which are very, very well designed. Frankly, I think they would be the ones I'd be picking to do. They will rely on a higher quality photography, but you might want to look at those as a good example. And then Pride Media, obviously as the name implies, focuses on magazines aimed at an LGBTQ plus target audience. So if that's something you're interested in doing, that might be a good choice. Either way, you're going to have to do some research into these companies to find out who they are, how they operate, are they horizontally, vertically integrated, etc. Who these magazines are targeted at. If you want to do, say, a music magazine, you might want to look at Anthem Publishing, but as you can see, Classic Pop and Vintage Rock are all aimed at people in their like 40s and 50s, or even older. No teenager reads music magazines anymore, except maybe Krang. And that's very much a mainstream one, not an independent one. But you never know, there might be a market. I mean, there's still things like, gear magazines, like guitar magazines and stuff like that. The other option is film marketing. This is officially brief 3, film marketing. A cross-media production to market and promote a new film in a genre or subgenre or hybrid of your choice. So, you know, a subgenre of horror might be slasher. A hybrid would be, I don't know, teen horror, or I don't know, sci-fi horror. Create print marketing materials for a new film and associated audiovisual material to promote the same film. You should create a cross-media production for a studio that is owned by a major film company, such as Warner Brothers or Sony Pictures, targeting a mainstream global audience of 16 to 25-year-olds. The cross-media production must not include a complete short film, film sequence or trailer. Again, this gives you a lot of variety. My recommendation here would be to go with a teen movie, because that would be the easiest thing for you to do, wouldn't it? Your teenagers. Teen horror, always a good one, easy to do. So, you've got to do a DVD or Blu-ray cover comprising the front cover, back cover and spine. A poster for a theatrical release in the UK and a poster for a theatrical release in a different country. So you're going to be creating 4 pages. The front and back cover count as 1 page each. Now, details of the production must include as a minimum. Remember, if you don't do all of these bullet points, you don't pass. So the print production must construct representations of at least one social group, whatever that might be. Teenagers, males, females, I don't know, a subculture of some kind, whatever. Now, you have to have at least 9 images in total across your print products. At least 2 different locations for your photography, and at least 3 different characters. Your DVD or Blu-ray front cover must have 1 main image on the front, original and different from all the other images that are on the back cover or on the poster or on the spine. An original title for the film and age rating, names of director and key actors. It'll probably need on it as well things like quotes, star ratings, maybe a possessory credit like the name of the director. It should have company logos. You would usually have both the UK and Irish ratings on them as well. Not always, but often. Spine has to have the original title, production company logo and age rating. It's also a good place to put another picture, little thumbnail picture. There'll usually be a catalogue number on there as well. The logo explaining whether it's a DVD or a Blu-ray. Things like that. You might even do a double or triple play disc. A double play disc will have the DVD and the Blu-ray in the same packaging, or a Blu-ray and a download. Triple play has all 3. On the back of your cover, you have to have at least 200 words of text in total, and at least 2 main images, original and different from the images on the front cover and the posters. They'll usually be at the top. 4 thumbnail images depicting different scenes or characters from the film. They'll usually be in a line or in a block. It has to have a promotional blurb, including reference to the narrative disruption and equilibrium. So synopsis basically, what's the story about? Something that's going to hook the person to buy the DVD. It should have a billing block, and it should have production company logos, age ratings, technical information, you know, things like copyright information, things like what region coding it is, things like what sound systems are used on it, and things like extras as well, if it's got any sort of like extras, unless it's a vanilla disc that doesn't have any extras. The poster for the UK should have an original title and tagline, at least 1 main image, including images that are different from those that are on the Blu-ray cover. and a poster for release in a different country. An element of narrative, so the photography should suggest what the story is about. So it should have some element of the disruption, it should create an enigma, it should demonstrate character types. Obviously it has to represent one social group. It has to have the release date, production company logos, links to the film's website and social media logos. It should have quotes from critics and reviews. There's no reason why these can't be the same as the ones that are on the Blu-ray. And a billing block. The poster for a different country should again have the same things, original title and tagline. Now, it says different country, but that doesn't say that country doesn't have to be a country that speaks English. So it could be the Australian, it could be the Irish, it could be America, it could be Canada, it could be New Zealand, anywhere that speaks English. Okay, but it would have to have the appropriate ratings logos, for example, for that country. Okay, or it should have quotes from, say, Australian newspapers if it's an Australian magazine, rather than the British one. We'll have quotes from British newspapers, right? If you're feeling particularly clever, you could do the entire thing in a different language. French, German, Lithuanian, Portuguese, Swahili, don't care, as long as you correctly do it. So it shouldn't just be a case of, shoving it in Google Translate and see what comes out. So if you can speak a different language, there's no reason why you can't do it in a different language. You have to have at least, again, like the other ones, one main image that's different from the images that are on the UK poster and the Blu-ray called DVD cover. It should again have an element of narrative, showing the disruption and enigma character types. It should have the release date, production company logos, film's website, which of course should possibly be specific to that country. And social media logos, again, quotes from critics and reviews. If you're doing it in a foreign language, you have to put a translation of any written text in the language other than English on the cover sheet that you hand in with your project. The secondary task for this, this is just some examples basically. This course is, actually I couldn't find the UK poster for Bill and Ted Face the Music because the film hadn't been released in the UK when I did this, and I think it went straight to streaming platforms anyway, but I picked it because it was done by Warner Brothers. So as you can see, it's got this is the American poster. This, I believe, is the Japanese poster. So in this case, it's the same image with different text on it. You wouldn't be allowed to do that. You'd have to have a different image. And this is the US release Blu-ray sleeve. Okay. This is one from Sony Pictures. This is Don't Breathe. This is again the American release poster, because I couldn't find the British one. This is the Canadian release poster, which has both the English and French language by Canadian law, because they're bilingual in Canada. And this is the UK Blu-ray sleeve. So that's the kind of thing I'd be expecting of you. Again, in this case, look, it's got the same picture across all three. You would not be allowed to do that. Notice the thumbnail pictures on the back here. You'd have to have 4 of them, not 3. And you'd have to have at least 2 pictures on here. But, notice it's got pictures on the spine as well. So that's another picture you can add. So, your secondary product for this would be a featurette for the new film. This could be as a podcast or a YouTube film channel to promote your film to its target audience. So, it could be 2 minutes, 2 minutes 30 seconds. So, it could be, this is very similar to what's on the other project. Production must include a minimum, the sequence must construct representations of at least one social group, whatever that might be. Audio, film, podcast or featurette must include an introduction or overview of the item by a presenter. Interview with members of the cast and the production team, like the director or writer. It could be in a studio setting or a virtual interview, i.e. via, something like Skype, which is common in these kind of things nowadays because of COVID. Recording of at one of the film's locations. Discussion of the experience of filming at this location from the point of view of an actor or a production designer. discussing of the concept of the film and the production process, and a range of sound, including voiceover, dialogue, soundtrack or sound bed, which all of course has to be edited. So again, you probably, if I were you, have an introduction in a studio, this is your one location, and then an on-set interview with the director or writer, or alternatively that interview could be in the studio setting, right? Or it could be, like I said, a Skype interview, maybe from the set or something like that, or it could be, in the end, one of the interviews is going to be on location. The YouTube is exactly the same, but again, this time you've got to film it. So I reiterate the point here that with COVID restrictions being what they are, this could be more difficult. All right, especially with social distancing. Though it says virtual interview, so if you watched anything like I don't know, the Twittertainment, McCurrode and Mayo, sort of like Radio 5 live film interviews on Friday, these will often be done via Skype or something. But as I said, you could do that on location, but it's going to be more difficult. So I'd probably just stick with a podcast, it'll be easier. Now, to sum all this up, this is representing 30% of your entire qualification. This is 30% of your A-level grade. Right? So your two sort of like exams are 35% each. Yeah? It'll be marked as 60. It's actually called your non-exam assessment, or NEA. It's internally assessed by me, and then it will be externally moderated by WJC Educas. So I will mark it, and then a selection of your work will be sent off to the exam board to be checked. Along with the actual production itself, you will have to write a 500-word outline of your aims and intentions for the cross-media production that is submitted with your project on your cover sheet. You also have to do research and planning. Now, weirdly, the research and planning is not assessed. In other words, you don't get marked for it. But you can't pass if you don't do it. So you've got to do it, you don't get a grade for it. So it says the research and planning will not be assessed, but learners will be assessed on the production outcome as a result from these stages. Which is a long-winded way of saying that if you don't do this research and planning, you're not going to get a good project. Research and planning is there for a good reason. You can't create a good project if you don't know what a real one looks like. So, you're going to have to undertake research to develop your understanding of the theoretical framework in relation to the intended production. So, as part of this research, you've got to be using the theories you've been learning. Okay? So, you've got to analyse real media text. So that could be film posters, DVD Blu-ray sleeves, magazine pages, podcasts, YouTube videos. You've got to analyse them in terms of how they use codes and conventions to construct generic characteristics, how they link to the generic tropes and forms of that genre. You've got to consider how specific techniques are used, like layout and composition, editing, sound, etc., how they create meaning for the audience. The way in which representations of events, issues, individuals and social groups, as appropriate, are constructed, considering how the choices and combination of elements of media language influences media and conveys viewpoints and ideologies. So you're looking at what is denoted and how that creates connotations. You want to consider things like representation theory. You want to consider things like semiotics, binary opposites, things like narrative theory. You want to consider representations of women and men and ideal self, ideal partner, things like that. You also have to do research in the industry context. So you look at what media organisations producing your product, how they're made, distributed, marketed. Because remember, if you're doing the film element, for example, you're producing promotional material. Scheduling and positioning, so how often does that product come out? Where can you find it? Any regulatory issues, like, what is acceptable on a DVD package? What information do you have to have on it by law? How that impacts on the production. Research into the ways in which media industries use digital convergence across different platforms. So, as we know, that might be, is there a digital edition of this? Is there a YouTube channel? Is there a website? Is there social media, etc.? How those products are interrelated, like the podcast, how does that relate, or the YouTube video, how does that relate to the actual main product? How they use to promote and distribute products to engage audiences in different ways. So you've got to identify examples from similar products that you've analysed and explain how they relate to your designs. You have to research into the methods that are used to target and address audiences, including the analysis of the techniques used to appeal to, engage, position an intended target audience. So, if possible, you want to find any information like media packs, for example. Now I noticed that you can't get hold of the media packs for any of the magazines from any of the magazine companies that the exam board have mentioned, but you might be able to find media packs from other companies that make magazines that are similar to the ones you want to do. It'll give you some idea, won't it? So, look at magazines and how the audiences respond to them, how they interact with them. You also want to do some secondary research, so that would include, going on the internet and looking at things, looking at textbooks. But you also have to do some primary research. You might want to do focus groups. So it might be a good idea to pick some magazines that are similar to the ones we're going to do, or pick some film promotional material and actually show them to people and get some feedback on them. We can do this as focus groups, we can do that as questionnaires, but we'll do that when we come back after the summer. More importantly, I suppose, is it's very important that you plan your production work. Again, this is done to show that you understand the theory, but mainly this is to make sure that your project goes smoothly. Quite often students don't see the point in doing this. Students quite often don't do it till they finish their product. Those students tend to have rubbish projects. The people who do this beforehand, like they're supposed to, tend to have way better products, because a well-planned product is a good product. Now, you've got to do a pitch or treatment for your cross-media production, which considers the convergence of the products in two forms and how they're interrelated but also distinct. How are you going to engage the target audience in different ways? Normally I would make you stand in front of the class and do this, and I video them, but because of COVID restrictions I think we better do this as a video. So that will be the first thing we do when we come back after half term, and it will be based on the research you do over summer. You will also be expected to prove that you've planned your project. So you're going to need a timeline, some kind of like production schedule that plans what you're going to be doing and when you're going to be doing it. There will be five if you include the statement of aims and intentions, point in the year when I will check your project progress. You will have to sign for it, I will sign for it, and I will expect certain things to be done by certain dates. So you need to make sure that that is done. So a timeline is going to make your life an awful lot easier. I highly recommend you do that. But you're also going to need to show that you planned your use of resources and equipment. So you're going to need to be doing call sheets. These are very, 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 very important for when you do your photography, or filming, or audio recording. Do them in advance, it's important. But you also have to have varieties of planning documents, depending on what you're doing, like a step outline that explains what your podcast is going to be about, for example. Shot lists of what photography you need to do, what filming you need to record, or it could be a recording log of what bits of audio you need to record, sound effects you need to record, music you need to record, where you're going to get it from. If you're filming something, you're going to need storyboards, you're going to need scripts, you're going to need draft and mock-up designs of your pages or print layouts, all of which has got to be done before you start actually making your project. How does this work out? Your 60 marks, 10 marks of this is going to go in your statement of aims and intentions. 20 marks goes in creating a cross-media production that meets the requirement of the set brief, including suitability for the chosen form, genre, industry context and audience, i.e., does it look like what it's supposed to look like? If you've done a Blu-ray sleeve, does it look like a Blu-ray sleeve? How realistic and convincing and believable does it look? Is it appropriate for the brief? Another 30 marks goes on creating a cross-media production which uses media language to communicate meanings and construct representations, which is a roundabout way of going, how good a job have you done? You know, how well designed is it? Essentially, because that comes down to. Now, you can use music you found off the internet. You can use sound effects that you found on the internet. It is better if you are able to do these yourself, but you are allowed to take them off the internet. But they have to be copyright free and you have to harbour the reference where you got them from. Everything else has to be produced by you. It has to be your own original work. All photography, all artwork, all text has to have been done by you. The only things that are acceptable to be taken off the internet are things like company logos, social media logos, barcodes. Things like if you're on a Blu-ray sleeve, I'm not going to expect you to create your own Dolby Digital logo or a region coding logo. Those can come off the internet because they're official designs anyway. Equally, as I said, any sound effects or music that you've created, that you've got off the internet, have to be acknowledged on the cover sheet. So this includes things like audio stings, jingles that you might use in your YouTube or podcast. All work in your project has to be produced by you, other than what I've just mentioned. You can use other unassessed students or people to help you. You are not allowed to appear in your project. You cannot be your own model. You cannot be one of the voices in the podcast. You are not allowed to act in your podcasts or YouTube videos. It has to be other people. However, there's nothing stopping you being in other people's projects, so I would suggest that you help each other out and appear in each other's projects. They don't have to be students, it could be your family, your friends, whoever. I know, pay actors and models, I don't care, whatever, as long as it's not you. You can also get other people to help you operate equipment. Like if you are filming, you have to operate the camera, but you can get other people to help you do the lighting or sound recording. All non-assessed individuals in the production must be credited on the cover sheet, so you have to say who did what. You will need their signatures. Learners can only be credited for work you've done, or done under your direction. I have to sign to say that you've done it. You will need signatures throughout your cover sheet, so if you've got any actors, any models, or anybody helping you, you will need their signatures, so I would recommend you get them as soon as humanly possible. Right, so that is the basis of what you need to do. The deadline, the final deadline for this project to be completed in its draft form will be the day we break up for Christmas 2021. I will mark them over Christmas. When we come back, you will have a bit of time to make improvements. But that's it, because we will need to be getting on with the actual theory part for component 2. So the sooner we start that, the better. Do not leave it till the last minute. You need to get as much work done as quickly as possible, as soon as possible. The more of this research and planning you can get done during the summer, the better. Okay? You will need to be very, very well organised to get this done, especially under the current restrictions we are currently facing because of COVID. If you have any questions, you know where I am. You only have to ask. But as I said, organisation, planning, and getting it done sooner rather than later is the key to good work. Okay? Right, see you in the next one.